A lot of people in the trades, they, after 50 years of doing it, they're kind of beat up because they are breathing a lot of things that aren't good, and then it's a physical job, so that kind of beats up the body as well. And so, but that kind of inspired me to think about that there's these invisible things in the air, which I guess similar to what you do, what we do, we're dealing with intangible things that you don't really think about. But then you have this like light bulb moment that, oh, these things that I'm breathing are affecting me and they affect our health.
Welcome to the Flow Lab, the podcast where we dive deep into the science of building performance and HVAC innovations. Today we bring you another insightful episode aimed to enhance your knowledge and expertise in the field. Joining us are your co-hosts, Ben Walker, co-CEO of RetroTec, and Sam Myers, a renowned building science specialist and RetroTec trainer. Together, they bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to ensure our discussions are both informative and engaging. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to enter the Flow Lab, where we'll explore the world of building performance. Let's get started.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Kevin. Appreciate it. It's kind of a unique scenario where you're here in the office with me and then Sam's away, whatever. Usually everybody's out and stuff.
Yeah. We've traded places.
Busy time of year. That's how we have to make it work. Yeah. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully you enjoyed the nickel tour of RetroTec anyway while you're here.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's an impressive warehouse.
Thanks.
Lab and
the
calibration, everything looks like it's done to a really high standard.
Yeah, definitely. And all the raspberries you can eat, lunchtime, whenever it's like.
There's the Raspberry Pi and the raspberries.
Right nearby, whatever. It's like no, it's great being out here, really. But I always like to find out more about the history of the company and then how Haven came to be and everything. And then I'm not sure if the internet's always correct or not, but I said that you were like an electrician that was working on the job sites. And then you discovered that there was these air quality problems on the job sites. And then that's what kind of led you to developing the first kind of wearable personal IAQ device. And that's where it kind of all started from. And I was just curious, how long ago that was and how that came to be. And
that was so out of high school. I had this trade background of being an electrician where there was a program in high school you could get essentially a trade ticket at the same time as going to high school. And then in the summers, they'd send you to do work
right on
through the summer. So by the time I graduated high school, I already had my second year of being an electrician. We call, in Canada, we call it a journeyman red seal ticket.
Okay.
I was kind of halfway there by the time I graduated, which was cool. And then by the time I was 21, I think I had my full ticket. We were doing a lot of grocery store, commercial work, bakeries, parkade. So a lot of heavy, more commercial stuff. And then we're also doing residential stuff. We're doing multifamily high rises. We were doing some luxury homes up in Whistler where the ski resort is or on the island. And so that was a cool experience where you're dealing with sort of another invisible thing with the electricity, but getting introduced to the trades. And then also through that experience, there was this crystalline silica dust. So every lunch you'd go down, you'd have a safety meeting and say, okay, what's unsafe on the site? We should talk about safety.
Yeah.
So you're eating your sandwich out of your lunch bag and they're talking about safety. And they kept hammering home that you need to wear your respirator. They gave you this big black silicone thing that your face would start sweating when you put it on. And you'd have to strap it on. You'd have to do fit tests. And when you do the fit tests, they have something like the air tracer and it would make you cough if you were to breathe it. So they would know that there's some leak in the respirator. There's
I think it's good for you.
Probably not good for you. But it's sort of like what you do where they're looking for a leak, right?
Yeah.
And then they put these big cartridges on the respirator that would filter out some of the particulates, and they even have ones that filter out some of the chemicals that are on these job sites. But I remember the crystalline silica dust, it was carcinogenic. It was something that they were really concerned about because they were grinding concrete. And so it's sort of invisible. It's in the air. You breathe it, you get cancer. So you've got to wear that, but then it's invisible. So the grinding and you kind of don't know.
And somebody you pay for a long way further down the road too. So it's not an immediate thing.
A lot of people in the trades, they, after 50 years of doing it, they're kind of beat up because they are breathing a lot of things that aren't good. And then it's a physical job. So that kind of beats up the body as well. And so, but that kind of inspired me to think about that there's these invisible things in the air. which I guess similar to what you do, what we do, we're dealing with intangible things that you don't really think about. But then you have this like light bulb moment that, oh, these things that I'm breathing are affecting me, and they affect our health. And so that was an aha moment. I think everybody has to have an aha moment when it comes to air quality. And for me, that was my aha moment. But I've seen now many customers have that aha moment through the wildfires or through COVID or through whatever event happens to them. Maybe somebody in their family has asthma, allergies.
Yeah. Or living over a moldy vented crawl space for decades. We see a lot of that too. So yeah, it's like you don't see it directly, but you feel it, but you don't realize that's what you're feeling. Yeah,
exactly.
Until you measure. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why like the first IAQ monitor, like that's when you started the development of it and stuff. Like was during that time, and what were the sensors like back then? Were they any good? Or
the sensors were not good back then. This is something that's like hard for people to imagine now. But in 2013, when I started thinking about this, I tried to buy some dust sensors, and they were from China. They were overseas, and they really didn't work well. They were like extremely inaccurate. They were really crappy quality. And from one, you would buy like 5 units and plug them in, and then look at the readings, and they'd all be wildly different. Like one wouldn't work on boot. One would be like saturated constantly, and the other 3 would just be completely different. They're like random number generated.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I was like, okay. and then you go from there to like, oh, you need like a $50,000 reference device, and that would measure particles really well. And there was nothing in between.
Only to prove that those sensors are bad, indeed.
Exactly. I kind of saw the opportunity of like, there's nothing in the middle. Like there should be something that works, that's affordable. And what inspired me was just like the simple smoke detector. Like we all have smoke detectors, and essentially as I researched this, because I knew nothing. Like I knew nothing. I wasn't an engineer, nothing. But I'm like, what's a smoke detector? That sort of feels like it's in the realm of
like how does it work and stuff
in the air. Yeah. So how does it work? So it's like when there's smoke in the air, it just occludes a beam of light. And by occlude, I mean like it sort of blocks the light from getting from one point to another point. Yeah. So there's a light and there's a detector. And if the smoke is enough, it interrupts the signal. Yeah. It's sort of like, in your garage, there's usually something at the bottom of your garage that if you were to walk across it, it would realize that there's
like as the garage door is closing or something like that, right? So
realize there's an obstruction, right? And it would say, oh, like something has crossed this beam, interrupted this beam from getting from point A to point B, and therefore we're not going to close the garage because we're probably going to close it on someone's head. Yeah. And so that's kind of the concept of a smoke detector. So like, oh, there's something in the way, start alarming that there's fire smoke in the air. Well, that was kind of the initial thought behind the particle sensor that we made, but we did a little bit different. It's like the presence of light instead of the absence of light is how we approached it, which it wasn't like super innovative because it was the same thing that a $50,000 sensor was already using, was laser light scattering. But it was like, how do we do this and miniaturize it and make it accurate? Right. And so we had to really look at like, how do you manufacture it? How do you calibrate it? How do you make a lot of that automated so that we can get the price point below $1,000? And then could this be something more mainstream that anybody could have in their home? And back then that just wasn't a thing. Yeah. Like people did not have air quality sensors in their home. Even professionals like had to really stretch their budget to get like a $10,000 piece of equipment.
So did you eventually get that personal monitor to market and stuff, or?
We did like an Indiegogo Kickstarter thing. We got it to market. We sold the first few hundred on Kickstarter. You can still go back and look. I think if we did like $100,000 Indiegogo campaign. Oh, wow. And we shipped the first few hundred, and the feedback we got was like, we don't want to know that we have a problem unless we can do something about it. Like everyone, including me, were super curious what would happen if we had this information. Yeah. And as soon as we all kind of got it, we all kind of started using the product. We're like, well, what now? Like, okay, it's not good. What do I do? Right. So I was sort of stuck with this. Like, I have just given people the knowledge that they have a problem. Right. And a lot of these people are like hypochondriacs, and they're worried about these things already. And now I've validated their concern. Like, right. So you do have a problem. Like... Ben, you have a problem in your home, or even just like outside of your home. That's even worse. Like, because you can't do anything about that. Right. Yeah. And then people are like, now what? And I didn't have a good answer. I'm like, what are you going to move cities? Move, like, change? Like, I had no answer.
Got to put the house on the market.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like getting radon tests and being like, oh, I guess I'm selling my home now. But then that's why we pivoted into indoor air quality, because initially it was a portable monitor. You could wear it, you could clip it on your belt, you could walk around the city, and you could kind of map out air quality issues. The problem with that concept is there's not much you can do about it once you know that you have a problem. And so the thought of doing indoor air quality is like, we spend, 70, 80% of our time indoors in our homes. We can actually control that environment. We can adjust, adapt, put products into our home, solve these problems, and create a safe haven out of our home. So that was kind of the concept of moving into IAQ.
Yeah, and where the name came from.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I remember the first time that you guys were at AHR, because it was a big deal. Like, I remember the talk was like, yeah, there's indoor air quality monitors have been around, but there hasn't been one that actually measures whole house indoor air quality that actually gets installed into the return side of an HVAC system. So that's what I feel like really kind of was exciting about you guys coming onto the scene and kind of changing things up a bit.
Yeah, because we had the portable one, and then we had one you could just place on a desktop as well. But then other people started doing it. Like, there was a company called Foobot.
Yeah.
There was a particle counter called Dylos that came out around that same time. And so we're like, okay, there's going to be competition in just like putting sensors on a table. And maybe we don't want to compete with the people who are getting into that. It was already a very niche market, but it was like very contrarian of like, if someone else is doing it, I don't want to do it. Because they're smart enough where they're going to do it and they're going to get it done. So like, I need to create value some other way.
Bigger backers or something like that. They can market or something like that. Or
yeah. And I was like, they're going to do a fine job. Why would I compete with them?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to just compete for the sake of competing if they're going to fill this need for the market. And so it was more like, well, what if we could do a whole home version that could live in the HVAC system? And now it's taking a sample of the entire building, and that could indicate changes over time of air quality issues, like when you're cooking or when chemicals are building up, and indicate that, hey, there's a need for ventilation or a need for filtration or change the humidity in the entire structure, not just the particular room. And so we kind of took this other perspective of like, okay, maybe bedroom CO2 is high, but maybe the rest of the home is fine.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can kind of circulate that problem away, or you could ventilate that problem away. So just a different way of approaching things.
Man, awesome. What year was that when you guys switched over and actually started selling the one that you installed, the air handler?
So 2013 we started. 2014 was all R&D on how to actually approach the technology, and we filed some patents on the particle counter. And then in 2015 we conceptualized the wearable device, and then we got Popular Science and Time Magazine Invention Awards, which we weren't expecting.
Oh, that's awesome.
That brought a lot of publicity, and that's where we had some people financially who came in and said, hey, we want to make this idea real.
Oh, right.
And some of them were in the heating and cooling industry. They were in HVAC. There's a company called Dust Free, which is now owned by RetroTec, and they said, hey, we believe in what you're doing. We think if everyone had this information, people would act differently. They would want to solve the problem, and these are the people who have the solution. So for them, it's like, we need to grow the pie of this industry, of this market. Be similar if you guys had a requirement out there, like every time you buy a home, like this number needs to be introduced. Part of it. And then consumers would get educated that, hey, I care about how leaky my home is. And that's kind of the situation that we found ourselves in.
And it's like the data is also available to the homeowner as well as the HVAC technician who perhaps installed the device and stuff.
It's we as we got more into the HVAC side of thing, we got pulled from that Popular Science Time Magazine, and we got pulled more into the HVAC industry. We started learning and getting mentored on the industry, and we realized that there's this big relationship issue between homeowners and contractors. Between the professional and the homeowner, there's a lack of trust between those two entities, and we kind of try to get more into like, why is that? That's something that I've studied for years. Like, where's this breakdown in trust? Where did it come from? Why does it exist?
Just like bringing your car to the auto mechanic or something like that. There's just like this
Yeah.
You always have this feeling like you're being overcharged or something like that. Or
like your card disappears and then you're just sitting there for a couple of hours.
It looks
and you come back.
Looks exactly the same.
Looks the same. And the guy's just like, $2,000 bill. And like, and I'm not really going to explain why.
Yeah.
And there's like no accountability, no transparency, no validation, no proof of the work, no proof that there was a problem, to begin with.
So is the majority of the Haven installs now done by HVAC technicians? Like what would be the ratio between like a homeowner doing it on his own versus the HVAC technician?
Oh, right now it's like basically 100% done by professionals.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to give a tool for professionals to be able to install on behalf of the homeowners, because when you put it in the duct, it does require modifying the duct. You got to drill a hole.
Yeah.
You typically have to power it.
It's a little bit involved.
It's a little bit
understanding.
Yeah. Now, like, there's a path that we're taking towards more of a consumer angle, because we've realized that pros don't necessarily want to go all the way to a home just to install an air quality monitor, right? That's like their cost
prohibitive or whatever for them to do. Yeah.
Because like they only have a certain amount of bandwidth, and rolling a truck 30 minutes, 40 minutes to a home.
Yeah.
And then they have to roll that truck 30, 40 minutes to the next job. So effectively it costs like an hour and a half just to travel time. You got gas, you got maintenance fees, all that. And then you've got the opportunity cost of like, how much money you're going to make on that job.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're just installing an air quality sensor, you can't charge that much. It's just such a low ticket item. It's only a couple $100. So we've seen people try to sell it for $1,000 or $1,500, because they're like, we got to make this worthwhile. But then it ends up being so prohibitive to a homeowner.
They just can't afford to do that, or can't justify the cost. Yeah,
exactly. So we kind of found that the best way for this to be offered is with an installation of an HVAC system, or when you're there for a preventative maintenance or to service the equipment, maybe when you're there to do a quoting process or a sales process. So basically, I'm already in the home. Now I have something that I can package in and offer.
An upsell add-on that they can provide. Yeah,
exactly. That's kind of how that evolved.
Do you think that with more people spending time in their homes, like since the COVID-19 pandemic, with more people working from home and stuff like that, do you think that drove any more demand for homeowners to look at this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, COVID was definitely this artificial huge spike in demand that came down, but it's still growing. And so I think the reason why it's still growing is what you just said. People have become more interested, probably because they're spending more time in their home. I definitely think that's part of it. Yeah. I also think there's always something. There's always something air quality related. It might be forest fires. It might be COVID. Now I think it's more like forever chemicals and microplastics. I think that's the thing right now that homeowners care about, right? Like we're thinking about the clothes we're wearing and how the Gore-Tex and it's got chemicals, and we got to get the chemicals out of our clothes, out of our bedding, out of our materials, right?
People we're just really becoming more aware. Yeah. I think, that time was a big shift in just how we live, because, a lot of the large corporations just went remote and still are. My wife works for a large pharmaceutical research company, and their headquarters had the largest building in Wilmington, North Carolina, and they sold it. They just didn't need it anymore because everybody's working remote now. I know that's a similar story all across the country. So with more people spending more time in their homes, I think they're just beginning to notice more about how that's affecting them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, their home office is in the basement or something like that. Or it's like
or the garage.
The garage.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, like you, Sam.
Yep. Got to make it work.
Yeah, just make sure your car's off when you're in there. That's all.
Or just don't use it for that reason.
I mean, there's other trends, like people are doing more renovations on their home. They're investing in different things, converting that extra room to an office, and now they're kind of closed up, shut up in that office all day. And so I think people are thinking, what am I breathing? Something maybe doesn't feel right, it doesn't smell right, it's stuffy, or I'm getting hit by a forest fire. Am I breathing that? Is it getting in the home? We just had a homeowner reach out to us from the Palisades, worried about their home and what they're breathing now in the after effects of those fires. So it's definitely like the awareness has certainly grown. And in the past decade, it's gone from effectively nobody to, I mean, it has to be 20-30% of the population who think about this on a, maybe not a regular basis, but at least on a weekly or quarterly basis. This is something that crosses their mind now.
And is it kind of still back to like when you're talking about the personal IAQ monitoring, stuff like that, then now that the homeowner might have some awareness about they have a problem, but then they don't really know about all the potential solutions to resolve it or something like that? Or like, is that burden on the HVAC technician who installed it and is kind of monitoring the data a bit and stuff? Or like,
that was the initial thought. Like our initial thought, and this is again us being kind of new to the industry and naive, was if we give the professional the data of what's happening, they will then know how to solve it.
Yeah.
Right. And it turns out that now a lot of what we do is going and training those professionals on
what solutions are available.
The solutions are available. And we didn't know what the solutions were when we got into this. So we had to spend a lot of time learning what the solutions were. But I kind of think about it like it's easier for us. The contractors, they have so little time and bandwidth. They're from job to job. They don't have this. They're not working from home. Yeah. They're not able to watch YouTube videos. They're not attending these conferences. Like we maybe they attend one conference a year.
They're trying to bust this job out so they can get to the next or whatever to get through the queue.
Yeah. But look at Sam and I and even you to some extent. We're at conference. Yeah. There's some time in those conferences where you're attending some of the educational, seminars.
Right now.
And I'm sitting there. I'm at my booth, and beside me is Allison Bales, and I'm just like, well, let's learn about air quality. Let's learn about the physics and science, and so it's cool to be able to have access to some of the conferences and educational series and people. And over time we've been educated on the actual solution side of things. And at some point, we still presume that we know less than the contractor about solutions, and we're just trying to get up to speed. And then at some point we realize we actually know a lot more about the solutions than a lot of the contractors do. And so then something flipped where we went, we need to train the contractors on what solutions to use in what scenarios and how that relays back to the data. And then we've been on this evolution of like, well, the app and the pro portal need to have built into it some level of education. And it needs to actually interpret the data and make certain directional guidance insights, we call them.
Okay.
So that particles are high. You told me you have a MERV 6 filter. Maybe upgrading to a MERV 11 would make a big improvement, right? Or you have a 1-inch filter, putting a 5-inch media air cabinet would improvement. We're not saying it would totally solve the problem, but directionally, that's one potential direction you could take. So we're starting to become more bold in that, like, actually, we now know quite a bit. We didn't 10 years ago, but over the past 10 years, it's like we have learned quite a bit. And now we can be stewards in the industry of helping train, educate, and teach those contractors how to deploy not only the data and the monitor side of things, but also the way to solve
the solution side, yeah.
Exactly.
And then, so when the insights are calculated stuff, then you like proactively notify the HVAC technician that installed it about the condition or something like that. It's for them to maybe respond to it.
Yeah, exactly. So if something's really wrong in a home, if I have 100 homes, it's pretty hard for a contractor who already doesn't have a lot of time
to go through and manually scan them.
Imagine having to manually go through 100 homes and look at their data and do that, like weekly, quarterly, it's not in the cards. We thought we'll make the pro portal, they'll use it, they'll, go through 100 homes and figure out what's going on in the customer base and interpret the data. Busy, So now what we do is like we give you a list of your 100 customers, and we tell you like what are the 3 homes that have the top issues that you should actually look into. And then we take that even a step further, and we have templated reports that can be generated that automatically say, okay, these were the issues, and here's a template of like possible solutions that you might want to bring up to the homeowner. And it's customizable because some people have different solutions and different ways of fixing things or talking about things. It's customizable, but we want to make things templated so that people who maybe aren't doing indoor air quality, that's kind of our mission, is to help them get into indoor air quality and sort of be the stepping stones that get them doing it. Because that's really the travesty that we saw was like, there's hundreds of millions, there's, probably 100 million single family homes with central HVAC that a very small fraction of them have any sort of indoor air quality, and very, very small fraction even know what their air quality is.
Yeah.
And a lot of the homeowners actually want something. Like, that's what we look at, that there's a demand, but really the professional HVAC industry has no supply of ways to solve it. And a lot of them need professional installation. Like, you can put an air purifier, like a HEPA thing, you can buy it from Amazon, Best Buy, but it's not going to ventilate. It's not going to pull chemicals out of the home.
Yeah.
You could buy a portable humidifier, dehumidifier, but you got to empty the water tank like almost daily, and it's just not really a real solution.
It's not practical. Yeah.
It's not practical for the whole home. Yeah.
Which is kind of a wild concept to think about, as far as like how little focus there's been on indoor air quality, because the final deliverable of an HVAC contractor is air, right? And you would think that's something that they would be focusing on, or that's something that the homeowner would be asking for. But as you're
question of what's in it.
Yeah, exactly. but yeah, I mean, as you were talking about, like, okay, like we can see, what the quality of the air is. We can see particulate matter. We can see VOCs. Now what? And I guess that's now where you led to the development of your ventilation controller that you guys have now, which I think is awesome, because you guys can actually do something about it immediately whenever the sensor sees that there's an issue.
Yeah, and it does more than ventilation. It can control humidifiers, dehumidifiers. It can activate filtration, circulation in a central system. But like, ventilation is certainly a special part of it, and part of the journey. I mean, it's been a crazy journey learning the state of things. The state of things is not good. Like, first of all, the state of things is not good. People don't do ventilation in most of the country. Like,
in North America, it's just not something that happens often at all. In Europe, they figured it out a long time ago. It's like, oh yeah, we need that. For whatever reason here, it just has not caught on.
Well, and 80% of the population live in hot and humid climates, or at least a mixed humid climate. And 80% of the population, so, over 300 million people, 80% of them will live in a humid climate. And in a humid climate, if you ventilate, like you would know this well, there's natural leakage, and then you're going to get some level of moisture in the home, and that moisture is going to create issues. If you're not handling that moisture and you have your dew point temperature is too high, you're going to get condensation, you're going to get moisture in the home, and that standing moisture and contaminants, you're going to have microbial growth in the home, and then you're going to be breathing that, and that's not good. And so that's one of the biggest air quality issues, is like mold and other microbial growth that people end up breathing in, and people are very sensitive to that. And so that's one of the reasons that we find ventilation doesn't happen, is because of that risk of moisture and the risk of mold. And so then it gets seen as a liability. Like,
if you don't do it properly or something like that, then
Well, and then part of it is that most of the ventilation controllers just worked off a timer, off a schedule. So I'm going to ventilate for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or even continuously. It has no idea that there's way too much
condition or whatever.
There's a crazy amount of moisture outside that we definitely can't handle. Like, this home cannot handle the level of moisture that we're about to bring in. Like, there's nothing intelligent saying that, hey, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
There's also, if there's a forest fire or there's worse air quality outside than inside, there's nothing going, that's not a good idea right now to bring that air in.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, there's nothing inside of the home saying, do we even need ventilation, and how much ventilation do we need? Right. So that we think about that, like the demand side of things is like, do I have a demand for this ventilation? So demand control ventilation, DCV is this concept from the commercial building industry of like, or even the schools, is like, do we need the ventilation? Are there chemicals? Are there things that we want to get rid of? Because that's a big cost of energy to do that. We have to recondition that air. But then the flip side of that is like, is this the right time? Like, are we going to create issues by bringing this outdoor air in? And in a lot of cases, the answer is yes. Like, you are going to screw things up more by bringing that outdoor air. And so it's like a legitimate problem there that needs to be solved.
Yeah, I won't mention the name of the brand, but I have an IAQ monitor here at the office. And then during the wildfire season here in the Pacific Northwest, I get this alert on my phone saying that the indoor air quality inside isn't that great. You should consider opening up some windows. And I was like, oh yeah, well, if you only
Yeah.
knew or whatever.
Well, and yeah, they'll say ridiculous things like, "Oh, if you buy a plant,
yeah, right,
it will solve the problem."
Yeah.
Like a plant, I get like theoretically a plant can like sequester some chemicals or something, but
that's why I have all these spider plants in the office.
It's not that it's not true. The mechanism works. It just
like the
you have to live in a jungle. Yeah, like they actually did the math on it, and they're like, you'd be in a jungle, and then you'd have crazy amount of spores and moisture and wet dirt and bugs, and you would end up in probably a worse situation if you took that approach. So that's where we thought the ventilation controller would assess intelligently what is the outdoor environment, and are there better times to ventilate, and then based on our indoor chemical readings and particle readings, like do we even need to bring in outdoor air right now, and like how much? And so that was the concept, and I think that was maybe not a novel concept, but it isn't in the residential industry. Like there isn't a smart ventilation controller in the industry right now.
And homeowners like for things to be automated. I mean, the less they have to think about, the better off that they're going to be, especially if it's going to work the way it needs to, takes the readings it needs to read, and goes from there. Now, I have a Haven and a controller in my house, and it's been fun to see what it reacts to. My wife ordered a new living room rug offline. I was like, oh, I know this is going to be horrible. And so it shows up, and of course, like we lay it out, and I'm watching the Haven monitor, and the VOCs start to go up, and then and after a little while, it starts to go back down because it kicked on the ventilation that I have coming off of my Santa Fe dehumidifier. And so, yeah, it's really fun to actually see it happen in real time when it needs to.
Yeah, and especially a place like where you live, where you're right on the coast and moisture's super high. Some of the automations that we've been working on, some of that we've launched in the past 6 months, like you can cut off, and you can come to these scenarios where you say, like, are the chemicals so high that I'm willing to take in some moisture? If I have a dehumidifier, maybe I don't need a cutoff because you can bring the moisture, I can dehumidify that air. But what if I don't have a dehumidifier? Then I need more aggressive cutoffs and say I don't want to ventilate in these conditions where it's too moist outside. And then maybe you end up ventilating like at night. Maybe at nighttime the dew point drops, dew point temperature drops at night. Maybe it's ozone production. Ozone production happens outdoors mainly when it's sunny during the day, and then it kind of tapers off at night. And ozone is something that will react with everything in your home, and it'll create a lot of chemical reactions, and your VOCs will go up just because simply the ozone outside that you're bringing in. And that reacts a lot with like cooking oils and skin oils. So if that ozone ends up in your bedroom and your sheets haven't been cleaned in a day or two, you're going to have these skin oils, and that ozone and oil reacts, and it creates aldehydes that are really dangerous to breathe. And so, the more I've learned about indoor air quality, the more I'm like, well, it's way more complicated than anybody thinks. We clearly need something very intelligent that can make a lot of trade-offs of like, here's what solution we need to deploy. Here's how we need to deploy it. Here's how we need to control it. It can't just be a timer that's like 15 minutes on or something.
And so speaking of ozone, along through this, a few years ago when we were having the COVID-19 pandemic, lots of indoor air quality products came onto the market. And then there was bad advice going around too. Lots of products that just generated ozone on their own and did what you were just talking about, combining with other substances and creating, harmful things to breathe in. So none of your controller isn't set up to turn on a UV light or it's not designed to turn on a Remy Halo or something like that. It does what works. We either need ventilation or we need filtration. We're trying to, remove stuff from the air, not add stuff to it.
Yeah.
So
well, that's been
that
like
education on what works and what doesn't is just so important.
That's been like the number one requested feature. and also it's the number one thing when we talk to contractors and I say, hey, are you doing indoor air quality today? And they say, yeah, we're putting in, electronic air cleaners. We're putting in photocatalytic oxidation. We're doing hydroxyl radicals. We're generating ozone or UV. We're solving IAQ with UV bulbs, right? And I'm just like, okay, well,
yeah.
And by the way,
have another talk.
and then they proceed to say, yeah, we make a ton of money on that stuff, and then I'm just like, okay, this is going to be an uphill battle because number one, they're now educated and trained on solving IAQ with these silver bullet solutions.
Yeah.
And then number two, they're also making a ton of money on them. And number three, it's really easy. There's essentially zero skill. That's the thing they'll tell you is like, it's super easy. Yeah. They're like, I even took one apart and I don't even understand how it could do anything because there's like nothing inside. There's nothing in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, so it's like an uphill battle for us, right? Because we're now starting from a false handicap starting point where people think they're already solving IAQ and they think they're doing it really well and it's really simple and they're making a lot of money. And now we have to tell them like, well, hold on. Do you actually know that you're solving the problem? And then like, what if the way you're solving it isn't really solving it? And then by the way, what if the solutions to solve it are actually quite a bit more complicated to install, you know, like cutting sheet metal to put in a bigger filter or making penetrations in the enclosure of the home to bring in fresh air and doing all that properly, or installing like a steam humidifier and soft interlocking that to the fan. And it's like, oh, well, that's probably 10 to 100 times more complicated than shoving a bulb, drilling a hole, shoving a bulb in, connecting power and walking away and making $1,000, right? So it's like such an uphill battle. And I feel bad for consumers. And I don't know, I kind of feel bad for the contractors who have been misled by manufacturers mostly during COVID.
But there's a viable solutions.
Yeah. Well, because if consumer protection laws really looked at this, and there are now a lot of lawsuits on this, they would know that they've misrepresented the ability to solve these problems. And by doing that, you've now trained a large percentage of contractors, like probably 40-50% of contractors put these things in thinking that they're solving IAQ. And so I don't know that it's the contractor's fault. It's sort of the manufacturer's fault who have done insane amounts of training and helped them create this profit engine off a product that in many cases is doing chemistry in our homes that we don't truly understand yet. The full
likely more harm than good.
Yeah. So does the system now take into is the outdoor conditions part of the equation when it's doing the insights and stuff? Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So like for people who installed this a year or two ago, they would have to go back and set those up. You can add those conditions back in retrospectively.
Okay.
But for anybody new who's going through it from scratch, you're going to see it right in the install flow. It's going to say outdoor conditions. And then there's a slider and you can say above or below these temperatures, it's going to stop ventilating.
Okay.
Or above and below this moisture, this dew point temperature level, it's going to stop ventilating. And there's lots that you can do now.
And it's just like based on like zip code or something like that, then it does like a lookup over the internet for the current weather conditions from the nearest airport or something like that or whatever.
Yeah, it picks the closest weather station. I would love to find some good outdoor weather stations that people could put right in their backyards. I know like Bill Spohn has one. I think it's a little pricier. It like looks at how much rain and wind and all this stuff, and it's probably a few $1,000s. But if we could find like a really nice one that has an API that we could connect to easily, I think that would be an awesome thing.
Yeah, this ambient one I have here, just like the full weather station, have it up on the tower by the house here and stuff. And then there is an API, and anybody who has one that's local, you can go and get the data from my weather station. You could go at your house, get my weather from here or whatever. Yeah,
there's like a particle sensor called Purple Air.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
that you can put right outside as well, and it does this sort of crowdsourced outdoor particle sensing, and it's just particles. It doesn't look at ozone or other things, so it's kind of only one parameter. But that is also kind of available as a map that people contribute to, and I haven't looked into this, but you can probably pull that in as an API.
Oh yeah,
and just look at the closest station and understand what the particle levels are.
Well, I know what I'll be doing later on tonight then. Checking it out.
Yeah. Well, and we're in an area here where I can imagine there could be, because there's some like farms and whatnot, that there could be some burning of stuff that could generate some hyperlocal like particle events that you might not pick up way over, in Seattle or Bellingham or Blaine.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's, you'd think that it'd be fresh air out here all the time and stuff, but like I mentioned, there's all these raspberry fields, and you see the helicopters come flying in, spraying DDT
Right.
over everything. And
Well, we actually,
around on it. It's like,
our product picked that up. Somebody was getting these big VOC spikes, and at very specific times, and it was only like once a week or something. And then they figured out that fairly close to them that this plane was coming down and laying down some pesticides or whatever, and that was ended migrating into their home and being picked up by our sensor. So that was pretty crazy.
Just through this whole discussion, I just feel like those masks that you mentioned earlier, I should get one this wear all like
some sort of astronaut suit, or
I'll use the air tracer, make sure it's all good.
Yeah, I wonder what they put. They put something like an irritant in the air tracer, essentially, to understand that there was leakage, because you'd be able to.
Yeah, well, back in the day, they used to make them with titanium tetrachloride, which is, you don't really want to be inhaling a bunch of stuff like that. So maybe that's what it was. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. But it worked really well. But, I had a colleague that left one in the trunk of his car on a hot day and it exploded.
Oh, man.
So, yeah.
I mean, but I think that's where, like RetroTec and Haven, where we've crossed paths a lot, is the fact that when you're on this journey of indoor air quality, for us, we had to look at the solutions because we have to help people solve the problem. And because if they can't, they don't want to know. And so we need to help people solve the problem. And sometimes I would love if it were this simple. You either need a better filter, you need a humidifier, dehumidifier, or you need ventilation.
Simple,
you just buy that piece of equipment, the contractor installs it, and you're all good. Unfortunately, what we also know is that depending on your climate zone and where you live and the home and the type of construction, you could have building enclosure leakage that's letting in things. You could have
the dynamics could be very complex, really.
And like Sam said, you could have like something that's not encapsulated properly or at all, where you got moisture just kind of sitting there in a crawl space in an attic, right? And so there's a lot of building science things that I've been trying to understand personally, and I appreciate you guys have helped me as well kind of understand with the blower door testing, with different products that you guys have. It's helped me understand more of why, I've added filtration, I've added ventilation, why is this not taken care of? And then understanding that on the building science side of things, there's still lots of areas,
other contributors.
I think
that's one of the big areas where we cross paths, is just figuring out how to control the source of the problem, and what areas of the house are constantly under pressure. For example, a return duct is always a good example, especially where I live in the Southeast, where we still put HVAC systems in the vented attics and crawl spaces. But if that duct in that area is constantly under pressure, then it's going to be pulling stuff in. And how we're still building houses like that today still blows my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely something that you can pick up. My particulate matter isn't really getting fixed. Well, it depends on where your filter is and where that sensor is located. If it's outside of the building envelope, it might be leaky ductwork.
Yeah. Well, and this is where we need to figure out how much training can we do of HVAC contractors and professionals and technicians on these things, versus when do you maybe just say we need to bring in a building science partner for you to team up with, because there's just going to be certain things, certain equipment that they've invested in that you're not willing to do to add on to your business. Maybe it's AeroSeal, maybe it's blower door, maybe it's spray foam, whatever it is, there may be services and solutions that you just don't want to get into. And so you're going to need someone who can do those things, because the buck's got to stop somewhere for that contractor where they say the problem isn't solved, but we've done good, but we're going to have to hand you off to someone else if you want to continue.
Just partnering with a weatherization company or something like that. We see a lot of HVAC contractors doing that. So we've determined that, the main source of your issue really isn't HVAC related, but, we can measure and see where it is and, refer you to somebody who can actually fix that. Then we can come back and talk about your mechanicals.
Yeah.
If you want me to switch out your HVAC system, you're still not going to be happy. You're just going to be out, $25K and be mad at me.
Yeah.
So it's good to be able to actually pinpoint that.
Well, yeah. Cause I don't know, let's say I'm going to put in a really good filter grill for you. I'm going to put a nice MERV 13 2-inch filter grill. I'm going to make sure the static pressure is not super high on it. And I'm going to cut in a nice big filter grill. because you got a particle problem. And that's like, someone has really gone to an extent of thinking through how to solve this properly, right? They put in a really nice filter in the filter grill, but it's not solving the problem. And it's like, oh, because between the filter grill and then all of your ductwork to get all the way back to your HVAC system, there's leaks. There's leaks all in the ductwork. And those leaks are happening in some attic that's full of like all your storage and junk and crap and camping gear.
Dusty
and
insulation.
Dusty and rat poop and
exactly.
all this stuff. And then moist, humid, hot, climate, and you've got plastics and stuff in there that are like melting from being in 120 degree temperatures.
That happens.
And now you're sucking all of that in instead of
and not even realizing it.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, you've maybe stopped the filters coming in. The filters stop the particles coming in to the ductwork, but then you've just sucked other crap particles in from your attic. And so you're still breathing crap at the end of the day. And so it's like, it's at some level, it's like, what is the contractor and the technician equipped to do, versus when do we need to bring in a weatherization company or building science kind of partner?
I think that brings up a good point too, that we haven't specifically touched on is, if you're going to use a Haven and the controller to be able to kick on your filtration, well, you got to have a good filtration system to do that. That's what I did. The first thing that I did was put in a large media filter cabinet right there at the air handler, which mine's in the attic. And then that way, once I put my Haven in and the controller in, whenever I did kick on ventilation, I knew it was actually doing something. So you got to have a good filter to really have that thing be able to react the way you want it to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the journey we've been on, and then we're just introducing the new room monitor.
That's what I was gonna say next. Like, what's now on the horizon? I think you guys just now released it, right? Then in theory, Ben has one.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, we've come full circle where we didn't want to do this.
I know, that's what. Myself.
But then now that we have our controls and automations, and now that we know more about indoor air quality and solving problems and what the technicians and contractors do and don't want to do, we've realized like there really is a place for this product. Number one, if you're trying to send something like carbon dioxide, it's going to get diluted on the scale of a whole home. So by the time it gets back to a Haven, if you've got a 2,000 square foot home, that CO2 that's built up in your bedroom is going to be mixed in the return duct with the rest of your home's air. And effectively, your 1,500 ppm CO2 is now going to be like 600 because no one's in the rest of your home. And so it's not like a great place to send something like carbon dioxide. So putting something in the bedroom to know that, hey, I need to circulate out this CO2 specifically hyperlocally in my bedroom, like that makes sense. And now, how are we different than anybody else who does air quality sensing? Well, we have the controls and the automations tied in to be able to circulate that CO2
and actually provide a solution to the problem as well, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so we kind of looked at this like, because of our controls and automations, it's differentiated, it adds more value. And together, room monitoring and whole home together, they're synergistic. They add value when combined. Or you could just put a room monitor in multiple rooms. And then in totality, if you average those, you sort of have a whole home picture as well. And so if people want to do it one way versus another, we no longer really care how they want to do it. And especially because some homes don't have good HVAC access, or maybe not even central systems. Maybe they have mini splits, et cetera. I feel sorry for them because they can't really solve a lot of their IAQ issues. They can't put in the filters, the other solutions. But yeah, now this room monitor opens up a whole new opportunity for different types of homes and people who want to have very specific automations in particular rooms. It allows them to do that.
That's a cool.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it must tie into the existing portal that you have for like the Haven central monitoring system as well, right? So,
well, effectively, it's the same device as our induct in that the firmware is the same.
Okay.
So all the software is the same.
It's just like in this nice new profile, though.
Yeah, it's just
it's pretty cool.
We just routed all the different sensors into the microcontroller and up to the cloud and everything. And we basically see it as the same device. And so we just needed a new way to say, well, these types of serial numbers are the new room monitor, and then you can place them in a room, and then the automations can treat it in a slightly different way. But yeah, effectively, it's the same architecture as our current product. So it was actually a very easy product for us to execute on. And there's some cool things that we can do with it. One of them that we keep getting asked to do is, maybe shorter term assessments that the professionals could conduct as opposed to permanently installing it. The other one is that we have professionals who are saying, like, we have homeowners who are interested, but we don't want to go install the whole home monitor because we have no plans to drive that far. Yeah. And we can't justify the cost of rolling the truck to go just install this monitor. We can justify it when we're selling them an HVAC system, or when we're there to do preventive maintenance because they're already our customer and we're already going to be there. But to go all the way to the home just to install this air quality monitor, like, it ends up the math doesn't work out all the time. And so this room monitor is also something that we have contractors trying to convince us to sell it directly to the homeowner, right? Or to allow the homeowner to have it shipped to them, and then the contractor can access that information to help them solve any problems. But effectively, it's like being able to remotely do these assessments is another potential path.
And high value,
yeah.
No, it's awesome. Then, like, when is it going to be available? And does it have like a name already, like a product name, or?
We're at the moment, a lot of our naming, like the Haven Central Air Monitor, the Haven Central Air Controller. this is just the Haven Room Air Monitor. So we're not very
straightforward and to the point.
Yeah.
Well, and part of it is like, I don't know, it's another layer of having to teach somebody some fancy name that then, they're still like, what does this product do? And so we're just getting straight to the point. Like, here's what it is. Here's what it does. And maybe in the future we'll come up with something. We're like, oh, we'll call it the Haven Insight or something. And we just, I don't know. We haven't gone
so
to
it could evolve into something different at some point. Yeah,
it could evolve. But at the moment, it's just our room air monitor. And I don't know when you'll launch this episode, but it's going to be available in the next couple of weeks here, at the end of March 2025 here as we're recording.
Okay, so for those of you listening, it's available now.
Probably.
Yeah. So reach out to us if you're interested. We'll probably have some of them. You'll.
I'm sure all in the show notes and everything have links to your website and all the products and everything. Whatever.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a good group of people. We did a pre-sale of this, and we just put it out to people basically in our Facebook community, on the Haven Pro community, and a large amount of people grabbed one.
Interesting,
We immediately had like 60 orders in the first.
That's cool.
Kind of week or two, and we're like, oh, okay, that's our first production run. Like, and so we're going to move into a second production run, and we're going to scale it up to bigger volumes. But that was sort of the initial thing. It was cool to just be able to put it out
what the uptake looks like.
To a small group of our more engaged pros, and they all grabbed. Some of them.
That's one great thing about the high performance HVAC community is just the people we have access to try stuff out and get honest feedback. I mean, doesn't get much better than that.
Oh yeah, no, invaluable. Yeah.
And some of the people that grab them in that group are awesome people. We know they're going to give the most amazing, insightful feedback on how to make the product super valuable. We got like Stephen Raridan and Tim Estasio and some of the quality people in there, Mark Green, etc. It's like, okay, these are the right people to be giving us feedback.
Yeah, because they're not going to be quiet. You're going to get something back from them.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what we've been working on.
No, awesome, man. I'm excited to see how the market takes and everything. And like I said, it's a cool profile and everything. It feels great.
Yeah, it's our closest product to like a consumer product to date. And we think it'll look good sitting on the table, and it's kind of how we tried to design it. And it senses a lot of stuff. It senses PM 2.5, CO2, NOx, temperature, humidity. So it's kind of all the things that VOCs, all the things that you would want.
You'd be interested in,
Yeah.
So awesome.
We're excited. And it's a good price point. It's competitive in the market. So
that's
we're
awesome.
excited.
Well, I'm excited to see the next AHR.
I'll have a big launch.
Can't wait to add one onto my Haven family and see how it works with the rest of the interface. So that's cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, well, awesome, Kevin. I appreciate respecting your time and everything. I know you're trying to beat rush hour traffic back to Vancouver.
Yep.
Sam's got to get to the ACA trade show booth soon, I guess.
Yeah. Fortunately, Kirsten's here, so she can go open it up, and I'll go join her here in a few.
Right on.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll bump into you soon.
I'm sure we always do. Yeah.
For sure. I'm always bouncing around. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Kevin, for joining us. This has been great.
Thanks for having me on.
Great conversation. Yeah, thanks.